It's really hard to know what to say about the news of Steve Wright's passing, except we are all absolutely devastated and shocked and blindsided by this news. Steve was an extraordinary broadcaster, a really, really kind person. He was witty, he was warm, and he was a huge, huge part of the Radio 2 family. And I know my fellow DJs will all be absolutely shattered too. And I imagine you're feeling sad too, and we are here for your messages. If you'd like to reach out, if you'd like to share your thoughts or memories about Steve, please do on 88291, because we've all lost a lovely friend who's been a big part of our lives for so many years. So we're going to try and do Steve proud for the rest of the show, and we're going to play the music that he loved so much. George Michael on Radio 2, A Careless Whisper. If you've just joined us, we're all just absolutely reeling following the passing of our really dear friend and colleague, Steve Wright. You're sending some lovely messages in. Thank you. I'm doing my best to muddle through till 7 o'clock with you. David in Hither Green says, devastated. Steve was such a joy to listen to. His knowledge, his passion for music was second to none. Such sad news. We all loved him. I hope he knew that we all loved him, because we really, really did. And he just didn't like a fuss, did he? Elizabeth says, heartbroken. I grew up with Steve in the afternoons and Sunday love songs. Yes, same. There are no words to describe how much his voice will be missed. And Mandy in Nottingham says, absolutely gutted. So sorry for you all, and sending you all love. Me and my mates went to see him in 1988 at the Black Orchid in Nottingham. I bet that was quite the gig. Let's play this. We'll play Quarter Flash and Harden My Heart. Lovely Anthony, who was his producer for many, many years, has joined us, and he's putting in all of Steve's favourite music. He knows his stuff, so we're just going to play great stuff till 7. America with Sister Golden Hair. Bobby's here. She's got your travel.
Thank you, Sarah. So first of all, the M8 on the westbound side, 3A for Bathgate, still partially blocked, really long delays by that earlier accident towards 4 at Whitburn, but you can get through just eventually. The A75 at Annan, we've got that closed both ways. Accident still being investigated between the Lockerbie turnoff and the East Riggs turnoff. There is again a diversion. M6 on Merseyside stretch northbound at 23. Now there was a breakdown at Haydock. They've moved it out of the way, but it's still slow. M60 anti-clockwise, the earlier breakdown 17 to 16 has gone. Still big queues though back to the M62 and the M6 northbound. 2 for Coventry, 3 for Nuneaton. We've got still 2 lanes closed. Oh, sorry, this is much
You're
more
doing
difficult.
well.
Okay, we just bash on. Let's just do the M1 on the southbound side at 11. For Dunstable South, there was an accident. We've cleared it now. Steve would kill me for this if I was in tears.
Would.
And then finally, everybody, M25. If you're clockwise, 13 to 14. The earlier accident is gone, and you can now get through.
Oh, jeez. You did well there, Bobby.
I just want to say, you know, it's really difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really difficult, and we're all absolutely... we just had the stuffing knocked out of us, haven't we? If you've just joined us, and if you, I don't know if you've heard about the passing about our dear friend and colleague Steve Wright. So we're all a bit of a mess. What did you want to say about it?
Well, I mean, you know, he gave so many people opportunities. He inspired most of us, and he'd be furious if we were crying now and making such a fuss. So sorry about that, everyone. I will have more travel news for you in half an hour, and thanks for your messages coming through. So dearly missed. Such a great friend.
We're here till 7 o'clock, and then Joe will be here. If you want to get in touch, as ever, we're here on 88291. Andy and Sue in Hereford have been on, saying we're so sad to hear of Steve's passing. He formed the fabric of my radio life. Always happy, always kind with his words, and always entertaining when singing along at the end of every song he played. Me and Ben were chuckling about that on Sunday because he did it on Love Songs. A true great. He will be leaving a huge gap in so many people's lives. R.I.P. Wrighty. Andy, Sue, thank you. Jerry Rafferty and Baker Street. It's 5:36. It's Radio 2. I'm all right until I start reading out the texts. You're sending such lovely texts, and there's hundreds and hundreds of texts coming in. Thank you so much, because we are reading and we just can't get them all out on air. Hi to Jenny in Kent, who says, I'm so sorry to hear the heartbreaking news about Steve. This one really hurts. I grew up listening to Steve on Radio 1 and even had a mention once. Yes, Jenny. Then, of course, I continued to listen to him on Radio 2. Thank you, Steve, for the company, the many laughs along the way. We'll miss listening to you. Sending you all love and strength, says Jenny in Kent. Thanks, Jenny. And Victoria from Sunderland says, I'm really in shock. Steve is one of my favourite DJs. It's his Top of the Pops on Radio 1 days. What an amazing presenter and interviewer. He made me laugh every time I listened to him. Same. And we've got Anthony, who works on his show for years, who's helping us with the music. And we played Careless Whisper from George Michael, and he loved George. And him and George went way back to George's Wham days. And Steve told George that the production on Careless Whisper made him feel like he was driving or cruising down the freeway in LA. And he loved that kind of production. And he loved, for the same reason, this tune from Richard Marx. Steve Harley and Cockney Rebel make me smile. You may have noticed that missing from that tune were some sound effects in the pauses that Steve used to play. Maybe I think it was hairdryer was one, brushing teeth of another, scrabbling, Hanna-Barbera sort of cartoon sound effects. Adam says, what a shock to hear about Steve. We were only talking about him the other day. His Mr. Fish Filleter, Mr. Angry, and many, many more. He brought a smile to so many people, bless him. We will miss him on the radio. We will too. Alison in Suffolk says he was the warm, friendly voice of Radio 2. We're going to miss him so much. And Florence in Liverpool says, heartbroken to hear the news about the nation's beloved Steve Wright. If you've just joined us, by the way, we're talking about Steve Wright because our dear, dear friend has passed away, and we're all really shaken, and we're all sort of just holding each other together until 7. Then Joe is going to be along with some more lovely music for you. Florence says Steve was the soundtrack of our half terms and summer holidays as we drove down the winding bends of Cornwall. Bobby, thank you very much. Now, I did say if you could play a song, what song would you go for and why? So you've chosen Christy Moore and Ride On.
Well, the thing is with Steve is a huge sense of humour. So there's so many songs that used to make us laugh. But he had a thing about Christy Moore, the folk singer, a real connection, a real vulnerability and sensitivity with Christy Moore's work that he didn't often show it, but he really loved Christy Moore. He always used to play Ride On.
And there was a gig.
Oh, the gig he tried to get to.
Yeah.
Yes. It's one of those things we know when you go, we need to see this gig. We need to try and get this. So we did try. Yeah. And then, of course, a big pandemic happened. So we never got to see Christy Moore live, which is a great shame. So if you're on a list to go and see gigs, go see them as quick as you can.
OK, well, we'll play it now. Christy Moore and Ride On. Lovely choice. It's a beautiful song, Bobby. Thanks so much.
BBC News at 6 o'clock. This is Mike Powell. One of the UK's greatest broadcasters, Steve Wright, has died suddenly at the age of 69. Steve Wright hosted shows on the BBC for more than 40 years, joining Radio 2 in 1996. He was last on air on Sunday, hosting a pre-recorded special Valentine's Day edition of his Love Songs programme. His fellow presenter, Jeremy Vine, said his death had come as a complete shock to everyone at Radio 2.
He was such an incredible professional. He was such a lovely man. He was lovely to every single person, the security guard on the door, the director general. He treated them all the same. He was so encouraging to the next generation of presenters who came in, people like me who hadn't got a clue. He was so generous with his time, his hospitality, and he was such a large character, such a huge figure in British radio. I am still processing this, and I cannot believe it. That cheerful voice is gone, and there are so many people who will feel this loss.
The BBC's Director General, Tim Davie, said that Steve Wright was the ultimate professional who was deeply in touch with his listeners. Radio 2's controller, Helen Thomas, called him quite simply a broadcasting legend. The Radio 2 presenter, Tony Blackburn, said Steve Wright was the DJ's DJ.
He was just a one-off. I loved his radio programmes. He, like me, just had a deep love of radio. And he will be very, very sadly missed. I will miss him very, very much indeed, and I think the audience will miss him a lot.
If you just heard the news there about our dear, dear friend Steve passing away, if you've just heard it, I'm sure you're just as shocked and devastated as we are here at Radio 2. We are just one big family here, and we've really, really lost someone special. Joe from Somerset says, hi, devastating news about the lovely Steve Wright. My daughter Isabel and I are just hugging our sadness out. We've got so many memories of listening over the years. My daughter Isabel is now 25 and she has so many memories. Thanks, Joe. Lee from Salisbury says, deeply upset to listen to this news on the way back from work. He was just a huge part of our lives without us ever even meeting him. I'm 54 and I've grown up listening to Steve. I'm truly shaken by the passing of Steve, says Jamie from Kidderminster. He was a radio DJ for every generation. Not a week went by without me hearing a song Steve had selected, making me stop in my tracks and add it immediately to my own playlist. I know for a fact, Jamie, you would be thrilled with that. The ultimate curator of great songs. He'll be incredibly missed. He absolutely loved the Bee Gees. Interviewed them countless times over their careers. This is Reaching Out. Some really lovely messages coming into 88291. Thanks so much for sharing them. I'm sure they're going to continue throughout the night on Radio 2 and tomorrow with Nikki, who's been in touch as well. Chappers is in for Zoe tomorrow. She's messaged me. Hi to Claudia's messaged me. Greg from Radio 1. Everybody's just in absolute bits. Steve will be genuinely missed, a true innovator and always entertaining, says Kenny Mack. And so sorry to hear the news about Steve Wright. We got married on Saturday and the shout out we received at the end of his love songs on Sunday meant a lot at the time, but even more now. That's from Ryan and Sean Duncan. Thoughts with you all and sending you two lovebirds lots of love. Just driving home when we heard the sad news at 5 p.m. and had to pull over. Just so shocked. Listened to him every afternoon for 40 years. Listened to him last Sunday just after my 69th birthday. This is Sue of Somerset who says love to everyone at Radio 2 and to his family as well. Let's play this. He supported them from their real early days. Take That, and they loved him back as well. He interviewed them many, many times over the years. This is Back for Good. Like many people, Steve was a huge fan of Stevie Wonder. We're playing all Steve Wright's favourite music this afternoon. If you've just joined us, we've lost Steve Wright, and we all loved him, and we're all absolutely gutted. And you're sending in some really lovely messages. Thank you so much. We're going to play a Love Songs classic in a moment. You know what he'd always do? Every week I fell for it when he'd do his daft breakfast that he was having. You know, when he'd rattle off loads of stuff he'd never have. And I'd be like, oh, and then I'm like, oh, he's obviously joking, isn't he? Matthew in Billingham says, I loved serious jockeying and the way he managed to appeal to all generations so effortlessly. Cy in Hull, hi Cy, says, 45-year-old northern bloke in absolute bits here. Cy, that's all right. Have a good cry, mate. Because he felt like, this is the thing, people felt like they knew him. They were friends with him. They were pals with him for years. Steve never knew how much he helped me through some hard times with his big show on Radio 2, says Cy, and I'm absolutely gutted. R.I.P. Steve, you'll be so missed. Well said, Cy. And Paul says, I'm crying. I'm so sad about Steve Wright. He's a legend of radio. We listened to him in the sixth form common room. We used to laugh so hard, my formative years of 1988 to 1990, and I've listened to him ever since. I was trying to do the maths. I think I've been listening to Steve since I was about 6 years old. That's 30 years. Stop it. He was a huge fan of the Beatles, a fan since childhood, so we'll play And I Love Her. Bobby, thanks so much. Now, Steve loved a lot of music, and he did like songs that had what he'd call a silly talky bit in there.
Yeah, that's right.
And you remember this tune and Steve playing it, and he'd do a bit of a call and response thing with it, where he'd chip in.
Yeah, when you start it, anyone who's listened to Steve playing this, you'll know instantly and have it in their heads what he used to do.
Okay, so he'd reply basically, wouldn't he?
Oh, yeah. You've got to play it.
Okay, I'm just going to play it. The Philadelphia International All-Stars, Let's Clean Up the Ghetto, that is. If you've just joined us, we're paying tribute to Steve Wright because we found out today that he has passed away, and we're all absolutely shaken and feel like we've had the stuffing kicked out of us. But we're playing the music that he absolutely loved, and he wouldn't want it any other way, and he actually wouldn't want so much of a fuss. We're in danger of making too much of a fuss because he was a man who liked minimal fuss and faff. What a lovely, lovely friend that we've lost, though. So we will continue to pay tribute. Joe's along in just over half an hour's time. That last Talky Bit tune really made me laugh and made me want to cry at the same time, says Chad in Stowmarket. He was one of the funniest presenters. Always brought a smile to my face every show I listened to. I'm going to miss Steve Wright so much. Liz says, today feels like I lost a friend. Well, you did, Liz, because that's what he was to us all, wasn't he? I started work listening to Steve Wright in the afternoon, and he lit up many a difficult day. Sunday mornings, mucking out the guinea pigs, listening to him on love songs was always a highlight. Absolutely devastated by the shock news. I mean, if you imagine the hundreds and hundreds of happy couples he would have shouted out on his wedding bit and stuff. Debbie in Essex says, I've been in tears all the way home from work. It feels like a family member's gone. Grew up listening to Steve on Radio 1, then Radio 2, and on catch up if I ever missed a show. Sending love and condolences to his family and to his radio family as well. A true legend. Mention love songs. This, of course, was a big love songs tune, and he loved this sort of classy 70s soul. Him and Tony Blackburn, huge fans of soul. This is Could It Be I'm Falling in Love. The Detroit Spinners on Radio 2. It's Sarah here till 7, then Joe is taking over. I feel like I'm repeating myself a bit, but I just feel like if there's anybody who's listening who's just popped the radio on and they've not had the phones on them or whatever, if you've just left work, we're paying tribute to to Steve Wright, to the broadcasting legend Steve, who we've lost and who we all love so much. So we're just playing some of his most favourite songs. We've got a couple of tunes coming up that would be from his serious jockeying. Seb's been on. Honestly, I'm gutted, says Seb. I grew up with Steve and I loved every second I heard of him on the airwaves. When we were away on operational tours with the army, he was that constant that made us laugh in tough times. Rest in peace, Steve. Seb, thanks so much. Claire in Sidmouth says, I grew up listening to him on Radio 1 in my first job back in 1989. Mr. Angry and Mr. Spoons were my favourite. And was it Barry from Watford as well? He was so funny and so ahead of his time. What an absolute legend. R.I.P. Dear, dear Steve. Love and hugs to all at Radio 2 and condolences to his family, of course. Imogen from Bangor says, so sad to hear the news. Listening to him when I used to pick up my little brother from school when I just passed my driving test at 17. We kept him on while we put 50p's worth of petrol in the car to get us home. I carried on listening to him throughout the years until I was picking my own daughter up from college, now age 52. Let's play this. Huge fan of Motown, Steve was. We'll play The Temptations and get ready. Joe Corey and M&EK, Head and Heart. That was a huge favourite of Steve's for his serious jockeying, as was Dua Lipa New Rules brackets Initial Talk 80s Rules remix, which I've never played before on the radio. It was such a Steve track. He would just hear a song and just get into it, wouldn't he? He was like, right, I've got to share that. We'll play Sylvester next, another big one from serious jockeying. Hi to Dominic who in Kent. So lots of serious jockeying fans are texting in 88291. My brother Scott and I are totally gutted about Steve passing away. Many an afternoon was spent listening to his show, and serious jockeying with his puns just absolutely made our Friday. Matthew says, my mates and I are all in our late 20s and we started listening to Righty in lockdown. He got us through that time and we all repeat his silly one-liners to each other. Getting a shout out on serious jockeying was absolutely huge. What a legend who could entertain every generation. And Tom in Nottingham says, I'm absolutely heartbroken. The whole country has lost the daft uncle of radio in all of our lives. So many times he lifted my spirits on miserable drives home from work. And who can forget the jockeying with no G. Sylvester, you make me feel mighty real. This one's hitting hard, says Jav. School on a Friday afternoon was art and Steve Wright on the radio. His characters had us 15-year-olds in stitches, through to his love songs on a Sunday in my mid-20s when I was engaged, and way beyond with his great zany characters. Part of the soundtrack to our lives was lost today. We are so sad. We are here. We're all on the 8th floor. There's just, if you step outside the studio, there's just people hugging. We're all just shell-shocked, really. Joe's on the way in a couple of tracks' time. This is Joshua Caddison and this is Jessie. Joshua Caddison and Jessie. Steve would always say, I wonder how Moses the Cat's getting on, just before he'd play that. Well, I'll never forget this show. Thank you so much for being there with me. Joe is on the way. Have a lovely evening. I'll see you tomorrow from 4.